Thank you for joining us today in another episode of Parcel Monitor's Unpacking series. My name is Jiamin. I'm the lead at Parcel Monitor, the leading platform for e-commerce logistics insights. So with our studies and together with industry experts around the world, we hope to provide our community members a platform to acquire knowledge and exchange insights about retail, e-commerce, and logistics. So following the e-commerce boom, there has been a lot of talk about returns. Retailers have finally realized the importance of a smooth returns process as part of the e-commerce buying journey. And this is an important kind of differentiating factor from their competition. So what does this really entail for retailers, and how has the returns landscape changed since the pandemic? So today, we're extremely excited to have with us Justin, Global Head of Product at SEKO ECommerce, to unpack returns management in e-commerce for us. So Justin is a 28-year veteran of the freight and logistics industry who has spent the last 12 years building and selling e-commerce services and products. Very happy to have you today, Justin.
Very nice to be here. Thank you.
So without further ado, let's get these sessions started. And of course, to our audience here, if there's any questions along the way, feel free to leave a comment at the comment section below, and we'll try our best to address them. And okay, so hope you're ready, Justin. We have a lot of questions about returns for you.
No problems.
So we'd like to ask this question to all our experts. So could you introduce yourself and what you do at SEKO Logistics without using the words logistics and supply chain?
Well, I definitely hope so, because we don't like to use those words much in the e-com part of things. So fingers crossed I can get through this. So as everyone knows, my name's Justin Irvine. I'm a very proud and passionate New Zealander who gets to travel all over the world. Has done for quite a long time now. But the benefits of that being that whatever I've done in relation to the wonderful world of the two words that can't be pronounced right now is around learning a truly globalized, aspect to every part of what we do in e-commerce. And within my current role, which is really just an extension of what my role has been in the Asia Pacific region, has definitely been around building out a more globalized feel for best practice. And best practice about developing products and solutions that are going to drive more customer acquisition, more customer retention, which is critical, and also just growing businesses through that by increasing purchasing speeds through better and happier customers. All of that tied together with what we've really focused on is bringing a global community of non-competing businesses together to create a better overall solution for the entire e-commerce industry. So there's a lot of, like, when you break out of the traditional realms of what demand chain planning and the physical movement of freight is concerned, we're really trying to drill down into what's actually going to deliver more purchases, which gives us more parcels to deliver and ultimately more returns coming back, which as a business for us is success. Our clients are growing, and how we do that now in a sustainable methodology is pretty critical. So, within what I do and then what SEKO ECommerce as a separate entity of SEKO Logistics, there you go. I failed. There's that one word. But, as far as what we do, we definitely see ourselves as more of a growth partner in the way that we go at problems or look to evolve businesses into more globalized approaches with our global and local knowledge that we have within very strong teams around the world. So yeah, it's a very exciting thing to be a part of. Changes all the time, constantly. Every day we've got something new that's being brought to us, which could possibly be the next best in practice. And so, just constantly evolving and having new things come to us, and us designing and creating new parts with our technology and our operational partners is a very exciting place to be every day.
Thanks, Justin. I'll give you a pass because I think that was a really comprehensive introduction. And of course, logistics is part of SEKO Logistics is the name. So really great effort. Thanks for the introduction, Justin. Okay, so now maybe diving into a bit about the concepts or the terms we often hear in returns. So we often hear reverse logistics and we hear returns management used kind of interchangeably. So maybe for our audience, could you unpack these terms for us and share how they relate to each other or whether they're actually different?
Yeah, so they are a little bit different. Basically, for reverse logistics, it's the physical movement of returns. So, returns parcels, consolidations, returns goods around the world, and the physical movement in and out of carriers, warehousing, and all aspects of physical, like product moving around. When we talk about returns management becomes much more of a sort of wider conversation piece, which is more around the strategy, how we engaging on returns, how we managing the data that's available. So a big thing for retailers now with the advent of far more available business intelligence tools is to be able to utilize that data in a live methodology to be able to make better decisions that actually transforms throughout the business. So you're going right back up into obviously the e-commerce team, but we're able now to provide insights to businesses so that their buying teams and their econ teams are looking at, why am I getting something back as so fast, even before the returns and the reverse logistics aspect of things are physically moving back. Taking live data off the customer portal to then enable decisions around, is our sizing wrong on the website? Have we produced product that's not fit for purpose? Should we reorder this product? From a finance perspective, all of that stock that's now physically in the supply chain from the carrier on its way back to one of the hubs around the world means that you own that stock again. How much stock have you got sitting around in different places? And that's even more critical now as we move into sort of a more, circular environment where we're trying to then look at re-commercing that product, further decisions around grading and much further down the track implications around returns management purely by looking at that data on a consistently and live basis is critical now. So very distinct, two different things, obviously very related, but important that the reverse logistics is talked about and addressed in a separate methodology and manner to returns management, because returns management is more of a whole of business impact. So, and as companies grow and, as we will talk through the rest of the questions, there's very distinct elements of being right on point with returns management these days.
Great. Thanks for explaining, Justin. So yeah, it makes sense to me, and I hope our audience also finds that really helpful. I think doing a quick search online, you often see these terms used interchangeably. So thanks for the clarity there.
No trouble.
So I picked up something from your sharing earlier on. You mentioned something about e-commerce. So maybe before we kind of dive deeper into reverse logistics, just a quick question from me. So what do you think is the role of returns management and sustainability?
Well, they pretty much go hand in hand now. There's been a lot of work. I know there's certainly a lot of greenwashing going on with people spending a lot more time talking about it and not doing it. I think in relation to returns, re-commercing really is the ultimate as far as cross-border returns is concerned. And I refer to cross-border returns probably more so than just normal activities around re-commercing within the same market that you're operating from a head office perspective. Cross-border returns is really the operations where, for instance, a UK retailer that has an enormous amount of returns in Australia should really be looking to re-commerce that from a sustainability perspective. The amount of carbon that they would be putting through the environment by flying those returns all the way back to, say, the UK, and then probably fulfilling an order back in the US or Australia again, and then potentially having that stock go back again to the UK is, it's quite horrific to think about the kind of footprint that enables. So really re-commercing, and as we sort of dive deeper into the commercial practicalities and logistical practicalities of reverse logistics being a very big part of that re-commercing functionality, I think it's important that companies have got a really solid strategy. It doesn't mean they have to execute it right now, but I think talking to the right people, talking to 2 or 3 different companies that specialize in re-commerce and getting a really good solid handle on how that fits, and also having it as plugged in as possible as a definite part of their sustainability and green practices to make sure that they're aware of where this fits, within their wider roadmap on sustainability. It's going to be pretty critical, and it's going to deliver some great results, not only for the sustainability aspect, but when you start to look at all the cash flow and the margin protection that recommercing offers on cross-border, especially, there's a lot of pluses, and certainly something why SEKO's invested heavily in it over the last 12 to 18 months.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for sharing. Okay, so let's go back to the topic of reverse logistics. And I would say reverse logistics is a topic we didn't really hear much about in the past, but has certainly made the headlines in recent years. So I think for you, Justin, was this a surprise, or did you actually kind of see this coming?
It was probably a little overdue from a global perspective. I think, having spent really the last sort of 10, 11 years specifically traveling to the UK and spending a lot of time in the UK, the UK retailers and carriers were definitely the first sort of real mature marketplace. And online retail in the UK has always been, sort of the market leader. I'd like to think that the US and Australia now and regions in Asia have started to catch up in relation to all aspects of online retail. But I would say that with our experience and seeing how mature it was, and a lot of the really sort of best in class practice that was going on domestically in the UK and the EU for that matter, I feel like now and with the advent of the pandemic and people's buying patterns, we've really seen a more globalization of what these best in class practices were, plus also the advent of people taking what had been best in class and really just moving it forward. So, just moving it further up the field in relation to what is the new best in class. And so for me, the benefits and some of the really cool stuff that we're seeing now around the world in relation to returns, paperless returns, better, more options around lockers around the world with different providers, far more accurate courier pickups, because that was one of the biggest headaches in the world was organizing a courier to turn up exactly when you wanted them to. And so all of those sort of options are now starting to become far more effective. And really the pandemic has been the thing that's really dragged it forward. And so a lot of what we're seeing now has been really just, I guess, an aspect of here's what's already ready to rock and roll. And now we have a huge returns problem because the buying's gone off the Richter scale. And now we have to optimize our both our reverse logistics aspects and the way that we manage those returns. So it was, I guess, a big speed up of what I thought was going to already happen organically. But for sure, I think everyone's kind of catching up now with the UK and EU.
Thanks, Justin. And you mentioned APAC earlier on, right? So in your opinion, how is this trend surfacing here in the APAC region?
Well, I'm definitely seeing a lot more options available, and that's critical. Having different options, referring back to the UK, you could have half a dozen returns options, and they're all super solid. When we look at countries like New Zealand, Australia, even say Singapore and Hong Kong, previously there was only really the national postal provider that was providing return solutions. And as economies of scale grow, and that's critical really to be able to have other providers come into the marketplace. We've seen an extension of service providers here in Australia. I'm in Sydney at the moment, and that's all it's doing is providing more opportunity and providing larger networks that are going to perform more effectively by having more opportunity for consumers to have a better choice. And there's definitely more providers coming into the marketplace here in Australia in the next 12 months, which is super exciting because we can enable those things. In relation to Asia, with the advent of, SF Express having their kiosks in Hong Kong, and a number of other different options with courier collections, the opportunity with Ninja Van doing returns now in Singapore, there are definitely more options. And as more options become available, then through competition, the cream rises to the top. You start to get some really, really good opportunities to optimize your reverse logistics for your consumers. So it's an exciting time for retailers to keep their ear to the ground and make sure they're really on top of what is happening, who are the best providers, get out, get to conferences. Now that we can all see each other again, which is phenomenal, these are the best opportunities now to keep yourselves on top of things and really start to look at things like sustainability. Is this the best commercial option? Am I getting the best choice? And when we offer global solutions for customers that, potentially, let's say Australia going to the US, we now have 3 or 4 options where typically there'd only been 1 or 2 previously. So, it's really exciting to be able to offer out multiple services to consumers while you don't necessarily need to be operating in that country to be able to do so. But certainly Asia Pac is catching up very quickly. Japan, for example, with Yamato not needing a label. You turn up with a QR code, they're able to put it straight into a satchel with the driver when he collects it. So there are some really, really good options becoming available, and the carriers are definitely starting to pick up their part in this and making things better, for sure.
Definitely. I think I do see it here in Singapore as well. In the past, I think we only had a couple or maybe just a national postal carrier.
Yeah.
And from last year, I started to see, when you buy things online, see many different carrier notifications, even in tiny Singapore. And I was just sharing with someone from Amazon recently, last year during the pandemic lockdown. It was my first time experiencing next day delivery. So it's pretty cool here at this in this region. Thanks, Justin. So I think you mentioned earlier on about the e-commerce boom, right? Really pushing things forward. People are upping their game, etc. But so is on the buyer side, right? People are buying a lot because of the e-commerce. They're getting used to it. So something that we observed as well is so we have buyer's regret, the fickle nature of consumers to kind of deliberate marketing, showrooming behavior, and products get returned very often for a lot of different reasons. So putting that in perspective, right? So has the pandemic-induced kind of e-commerce boom affected the returns landscape? I think you touched about this a little bit already earlier on. Just to get your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from my perspective, at least anyway, it's really just put on steroids the need to have better returns management, better returns options, better solutions, because previously the volumes weren't at a point where it was impacting P&L overly, but also with sustainability coming into mix, there's a lot of levers, a lot of things that are going to hit a business that you really have to start to weigh up how you review returns, and really how the volumes have increased as again brought customers, retailers, and ourselves as service providers to really start to look at, are we doing things in the best way? And again, across many different aspects of that question. So the volumes allow us to make better solutions. They allow us to make better products. So in some ways, the boom is actually making things better for everybody in relation to returns. The other thing that I think fundamentally is that most retailers, if they aren't already, need to start seeing returns as a specific point of difference for them to acquire and retain customers. Over 80% globally in multiple regions now is clearly showing stats that unless you have a proper return solution, you're not going to be able to acquire the customer in the first place. So instead of this being a cost attribute, what I've seen with the returns volumes is that they're actually, now that they're big enough that they have to get smart with returns and their policies, that's also enabling them to be able to utilize that as a point of difference in their sales process and their acquisition process. So even free returns, for example, really is an investment in customer acquisition and retention. And that change in methodology and thinking is probably more about and being driven by the pandemic and the boom in the way that e-commerce has worked. Because if you especially now that things are softening in the marketplace, which they 100% are in 2022 compared to 2021. I mean, you could do anything last year and your sales were going to go through the roof. This year, things are a little bit more competitive, and you've got to be starting to think about, how effective am I in the marketplace? And really that e-commerce boom has really created, I guess, a real rod for people's backs if you weren't offering the best that you could possibly offer compared to the rest of the marketplace. It's not an easy thing. Returns, I think people, will often be like, oh, I'll just kind of copy and paste what someone else has done. Can't really do that. You need to have your own defined strategy. And it's not easy, but there's plenty of people you can talk to get it right. And now with the softening, with the boom really sort of, I feel, coming off, with a lot of uncertainty, with a lot of problems that we've got going on around the world, both supply driven and then obviously conflict driven. I think with the softening of things, we've come out of the boom now, and we've got to pivot and change on that.
100%. Thanks, Justin. So I think as Parcel Monitor, we look at the data very often, and we do see that the growth is slowing down. Not say that e-commerce is not growing, it's still growing, but not as the insane high that we saw during the e-commerce boom. And exactly, and I like what you said about, so for 2022, it's important for retailers to not just do the same thing as everyone else, but really stand out from the competition.
Definitely.
Thanks, Justin. So I think you spoke a bit about free returns, and then there's also been a huge kind of debate about, so should retailers offer free returns? And the thing about returns is a very expensive process, right? So maybe also following up to the kind of next question. So returns are actually known for being one of the most expensive components of the e-commerce cycle. So Justin, so what do you think about retailers offering free returns, and what are some of the examples of companies actually taking to manage these costs, let's say, if they want to offer free returns?
Well, I guess you got to break it down into different elements of what is my return cost. And if you're offering free returns, you really better be offering some level of in-country consolidation basis. In relation to the domestic market that you're supporting, you're going to need some sort of free returns option. So there are lower cost options in every marketplace that you can go with that might be not necessarily the greatest, but they are going to be effective and they can be the free return option. You can always offer the, I guess, the high quality returns option at a cost to recover and cover, effectively what's happening. We see from a cross-border perspective that the majority of our companies that we work with today are charging anywhere from $4.95 to $10.95 to $14.99 to all sorts of numbers to recover the cost of cross-border returns specifically. And I think that, generally speaking, is kind of the right methodology around that. And then really the domestic marketplace, deductions around, anywhere from $1.95 through to $9.95, depending on, again, what your key strategies are. So we've seen a lot of companies move to more of we'll do free returns, but free exchange, or they'll do free exchanges, but they'll charge for returns. Or the retailers have a huge opportunity here to offer free returns for dropping product in store, and also doing things like initiatives around providing vouchers as well to really try and drag them in the store. Some really strong data that came out of the UK early on with companies like Sports Direct, who were offering a £5 voucher within the returns parcel if they took it back to a store, because they found that they were actually spending £15 on top of the £5 that they were given. So it's about a revenue generation process when it comes to free returns. The other thing with free returns is it really, whether you turn it around on its head and say returns is actually a marketing cost. So I'm going to offer free returns with the best possible solutions to my consumers because I have a marketing budget, and my cost, my ROAS, effectively, I'm going to take some of that and my marketing spend, and I'm going to put it and invest it into returns. So there's definitely strategies that you can roll out during peak times where you might offer free shipping, free returns, but for a limited period of time. When you're trying to drive sales during either your strong periods or your weak periods, and then go back to charging it. And you can mix that up. And again, you measure for success. If you're not measuring now before you make changes, then how do you know that you've made the right change? So again, that refers back to our return management conversation earlier on, which is before you make a change, know where you sit. Know where you sit with your customer acquisition, know where you sit with your customer lifetime value and your customer retention, so that you can, when you make these changes, you can make qualified decisions about, am I making the best decisions around free or charging for returns? I guess the market will always dictate something in relation to whether you have to provide free. I know in the UK, there's kind of been a little bit of a change. It was always free, and now that people are charging for it, I think the retailers are making, again, use of the fact that they've got stores to offer free there, but actually charge you if you were going to use Royal Mail or Hermes or Doddle or, one of the other options that's available, for example, in the UK. I think in the US, there's a real mentality of we've got to do free returns, with people like Happy Returns coming in with really good commercial solutions. That's not hurting as much, but, it's still expensive. So, just to suck up returns like that, you really got to decide whether you're putting it into the marketing spend or whether or not you're going to be putting it into the logistical spend, or you're sharing the cost because you're creating more customer lifetime value. You're getting them to repurchase faster. So there's different ways. I think it's just how we look at it now in relation to what does that cost actually mean.
Thanks, Justin. I think a really interesting perspective, having returns parked as a marketing cost. I think that makes sense. I think we did a survey recently, and free returns seem to be one of the pull factors for a lot of consumers these days. So
yeah,
definitely interesting.
And I think that's just a behavioral thing that they've been brought into by everyone offering free returns. And now it's like, how can we offer free returns, but make them work for it a little bit? And I think there's a lot of really cool different strategies that are going around in relation to that. Certainly, the key is at some point you're going to need to offer free returns, like whether it's on sale or whether it's part of a strategy on a given country. I think the difference as well is you can't really say free or paid returns as a global thing. You've got to meet customer requirements and expectations within each region, and sometimes within each country, which is pretty exhausting for the e-com team. But if you're really going to go and target somewhere like, say, the US, you have to be meeting local US requirements. You need to be frictionless. It needs to be easy for them. So yeah, I don't think there's like one answer, like flat answer for everything, and every company is different. But I genuinely think, yeah, there's going to be times where you're going to need to offer free returns. Sale periods are a classic where you've got to meet everyone else in the marketplace that's in your vertical. If they're doing free returns, you're pretty much going to have to do free returns. So there are times where you got to suck it up.
Exactly. Okay, so just a little shout out. I think we have a couple of people commenting and watching this live stream. So don't be shy. If you have any questions here for Justin, please leave a comment. Okay, so now let's maybe go back to the questions. But of course, everyone, please don't be shy. Leave a question if you have one. Okay, so now going back to kind of retailers and returns, right, Justin? So what are some of the areas that you have seen in which retailers often miss the mark when developing returns policies?
Well, I guess the key aspect is communication. I think is the biggest, like before we even get into the terms and conditions, having something on your main page that's easy that they can click through to. I see certain companies do it very well, and that you can see it in the banners at the top of the web page. So before we even get into the policies, having a clearly communicated journey. Here's where you start, here's where it finishes, this is where you get refunded, this is where we communicate, this is how you get in touch, here's FAQs. Like that really, before we even look at the policy aspect, is probably a critical aspect for me, and where I see a lot of companies getting it wrong. Having really tough policies is also quite harsh on people. I think that, again, regionalized is critical, because what people want in the UK is different to what people want in Australia and the US. Obviously, everyone wants free returns, everyone wants it super easy, but every country will have a certain nuance with it. So, we see this being worked quite effectively for companies that might use Shopify, for example, where each store, they're able to have their terms and conditions, and we're able to determine that quite easily through the likes of the portal and how we use that. I think just generally speaking, again, just referring back to not cutting and pasting, that's just terrible. Like, actually spend time, figure out your own story, your own business. What are the key levers around financials and what you can and can't afford to do, and really just making sure that it's easy to read. So the first thing that we definitely get people to do is don't get us to check your returns policy, because we already know everything that you're putting in there. Like, your best bet is to go and get someone who's buying all the time, who has nothing to do with e-commerce and nothing to do with freight and logistics, and get them to read your policy and see if it actually makes sense to them. And again, measure for success, right? So before you make changes to your policy, where are we at right now? What's our CSAT or our NPS on returns? We make those changes. Have those changes actually been effective? I think from a commercial standpoint, there are a lot of changes that people should really make on the front end portal. Not allowing returns of sale items, low value items. All the good portals will allow you to filter those out and stop you from returning a $4 pair of socks that's going to cost the business like $12 to manage. That doesn't need to happen. The 30, 60, 90 days, whatever the strategy is around that. If someone is wanting a store credit versus a refund, I'm a massive advocate, and I'll probably get lambasted for this, but I'm a big advocate of cash refund. I think that the buying behaviors we're seeing from people, we partner with a company called Refunded here in Australia, the data that we're seeing through our portal and people getting their money back faster, and how more effective it is at a cash refund, where you'd normally think, oh, they're just going to take the money and they're going to go spend it somewhere else. Well, the instant cash refund, we're seeing people come back and buy 4.5 times faster, and the AOVs are going up. So it's, again, with the data, we're seeing some really solid stuff. Moving to cash refunds, moving to refunds or store credit if you want to stay with store credits on first carrier scan. We've got the data to say, hey, look, the fraud on most brands is really, really low. So get them back on the hamster wheel, get them spinning again. And that really is a key aspect of the returns policies is, if you're going to stick with store credit and that's your big thing, give them a reason to use the store credit, make it 110%. And again, just don't allow returns of low margin, low revenue product that you really don't want going through your warehouse again. Or even better, because of the focus on sustainability, provide them an option to be able to donate that product effectively to somewhere where someone might need it. And we're seeing some really cool stuff here in Australia and in the US now, where companies are moving to a methodology of, you can return it, we'll give you the refund, but you've got to go and take it down and donate it to such and such. So that's a really cool evolution that not only works from a sustainability perspective, but speaks to the whole community. And I would definitely say that having that as part of your returns policy and your entire offering will definitely have people coming back and shopping with you. I know I would.
That's super interesting. It seems like retailers are also being very creative. I hear you about the vouchers. Drop your returns parcel back in store, and I'll give you a voucher. I think that's super effective. I can see myself already spending more. And then, of course, the sustainability twist. I think that's awesome as well. So really looking forward to what the other retailers. With competition, with the e-commerce boom, we're seeing a lot of different strategies and new options for consumers. So really looking forward to that. Okay, so we do have a question from Sanish. And so Sanish is asking, so what strategies do you suggest to manage undelivered returns due to address issues?
So I presume these are return to sender parcels as a guess, and appreciate the question. Obviously we kind of tend to look at those as two separate things, but quite rightly, they're part of reverse logistics. So we actually, with our cross-border parcels, especially within what we do at SEKO, is that we actually have a dedicated product within our global tools that allows our team around the world to be able to update RTS parcels with reasons and manage those parcels for whatever reasons they might have come up. And then our team will get an update every day to say, hey, we've had a response back on, these 6 parcels with these 6 different reasons. These 3, put them in with our returns and relocate them back to origin. These other 3, can you please redeliver with this new information? So I think working with delivery partners that are able to facilitate second attempts. One of the things that we also do in Australia is that we have, if there's an address issue, we're actually able to drop it to the closest drop point, which then enables the customer to go and collect those parcels from an area very close, which means that our first time delivery percentage is very high off the back of that. So kind of, not parking the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, trying to get ahead of the problem is a core aspect. Working with carriers that are able to call the customer. So we have a number of carrier options around the world. Again, here in Australia, where if the address isn't right, they've got the phone number and they're actually able to ring the customer and make sure that they either get the right address or they interpret the address that's on the parcel so that they can get their first time delivery and eliminate those from the start. But effectively, if there's no chance they can't get back, then yeah, we basically consolidate those RTS parcels or those unsuccessful deliveries with genuine customer returns and move them all back under the same consolidation methodology. But certainly, I think getting ahead of it and choosing carriers that are going to eliminate that as much as possible is probably the key aspect and the key driver there.
Thanks, Justin. Sanish, I hope that answered your question. I think that's a very comprehensive response from Justin. And yeah, so thanks for the question. Okay, so it seems like we are approaching the end of the session, and I have just one last question for you, Justin. Sure. So in your opinion, so what is the next big thing in returns management? So yeah.
I could speak for about 4 hours on this, I think. So I'll try and cut it down into kind of the key levers. I think we talked about it earlier. The big one for me is re-commerce. I think we're very early days in the world of re-commerce, and I think that the commercial offering will evolve over the next 12 to 24 months as it becomes something you can buy. You can go to the App Store and get a plugin for Shopify to be able to re-commerce, and it relists and it grades product, and it we're not there yet, and no one's there yet. So getting to that point in the next 12, 24 months is going to be critical for the entire industry. More sustainability, obviously, for re-commercing, the cash flow aspects, the margin protection, speed to refill that product, and the sustainability aspect of that is going to be a key lever, and that growing very quickly over the next period of time. Instant cash refunds, as that starts to become a global offering, is going to see, I think, become quite prevalent. Certainly, when we look at the returns portal, people selling through the returns portal and getting people spending as quickly as possible. Exchanges has been a thing that's been around forever. So I think that next evolution of shopping within the portal, something we do as well. So we're trying to stay on the front end of that. And then the big one for me is I guess we talk about BOPA, which is buy online, pick up anywhere. Well, I think the reverse option of that, which is return online and then drop off anywhere, is going to be the next big thing with retailers, especially. We're already seeing that today with partnerships between companies that work in, with, say, Walgreens, for instance, where you can go and return a parcel at Walgreens. The Happy Returns guys in the States, it's a really slick option. We're proud to be working with those guys. The different aspects around working with retailers and basically creating kind of like a community within e-commerce of businesses that work together. The Westfields, for example, been able to drop into those. So I really see the retailers being able to tag in if they're effective at their collections and their deliveries and meeting customer requirements with on-demand deliveries. Then when you look at returns, they are equally placed to really have a huge competitive advantage over their pure play, competitors. So I think that will be an interesting aspect of things. But those ones for me really are the sort of the key drivers, I think, for refinement of what we do. And the biggest thing really is, if you're not doing it today, you have to know what is going on in your data for returns. You have to measure for success now, and then make changes and review those changes. If they don't work, just dial it back and have another go. See what the data told you. We've made tons of mistakes in the past. Every company makes tons of mistakes in the past, but we learn from it. And when you become a data-driven business, you make less mistakes and a lot more better decisions. So that's really that was probably the last part, I think, is really understanding your data and being very, very close to it.
Thanks, Justin. Completely agree with you, especially I think the last portion, importantly, is to understand what the consumers are looking for, right, based on your own data. Thanks, Justin. Okay, and then that's all, I think, for the questions that we had for you, Justin. So thank you so much for being here together with us and our community today at Parcel Monitor. I think we learned a whole lot about returns, some of the concepts, some of the use cases, and of course, what we can look forward to. So thank you so much again, Justin.
It's been my privilege. It's been great to talk to you. I certainly enjoy being able to get the word out there. And like I said, I think the key element is don't get caught thinking that you've got to do what everyone else does. Have your own strategies. Read up. Be well read on the subject. Everything's evolving all of the time. So it's exciting. It can be a lot of hard work for retailers. I don't envy them a lot of the time. But certainly there's companies like ours that are out there to help. So yeah, by all means, reach out if you need to. There's a lot of good reading out there on returns. There's a lot of good data.
So thanks everyone for joining us today in another episode of Unpacking series. Remember to follow us at Parcel Monitor's LinkedIn page for more of these sessions with experts like Justin. And hope you have a great day, afternoon, evening ahead. So thank you again, Justin.
No worries. Thanks, everybody.